Good evening. It is the Resistance Report for January 31st, 2017. In an absolutely stunning surprise move, Donald Trump tonight named as his next Supreme Court pick for the Supreme Court, Sally Yates. That was a joke. Sally Yates, of course, was the person he fired last night, the Deputy Attorney General, who he said had betrayed the Justice Department. No, Donald Trump is not going to pick a Democrat or a woman. He's not going to pick, he's going to pick a white man who is a Republican conservative. He's created tonight a kind of an apprentice television drama. I've never seen anything like this. Usually, when a president selects a Supreme Court justice, a nominee, it's very dignified. It happens in a way, usually during the day. It's picked up by the news media. A president downplays it because again, there's a sense that the Senate has to confirm. And obviously a president's selection of a nomination of the Supreme Court is just the beginning of a process. And so you have normally a fairly respectful, in fact quite respectful process unfold between the president and the Senate. Well, no, this is Donald Trump, so it's the apprentice. And he has summoned the two finalists, both of them white men, to the White House, and he is supposed to, maybe by the time this is over, maybe right now, he's decided whether it's going to be, and the two finalists are either Neil Gorsuch. By the way, do you remember Ann Gorsuch? She was head of the Environmental Protection Agency under Ronald Reagan. This is her son. He's 49 years old. He is a Scalia clone. Somewhat, I think, a little bit more modest and less brazen than Antonin Scalia, who he'd be replacing, but no less conservative. He has a kind of Ivy League polished credentials of a sort that Donald Trump said he didn't want, but he's one of the contenders. The other contender is a fellow named Thomas Hardiman, who was actually suggested by Donald Trump's sister. And we don't know. I don't know as of this moment, but here's what I do know. I know that Senate Democrats are going to delay this nomination as long as is possible. In fact, so far, Senator Jeff Merkley has already said that this was a stolen Supreme Court seat. And so the Democrats are going to say, no, they're going to hold back, and they are going to essentially say to Mitch McConnell, we are not going to allow a vote. I mean, you have to have 60 votes beforehand. Actually, the nomination is Neil Gorsuch, I just learned. Just came to me. I thought about it hard, and it just, Donald Trump, in the back of my mind, he said, Neil Gorsuch. Neil Gorsuch, I've already told you, he's a conservative. He's a clone of Scalia. He's respected, but he is very, very right wing. And I think the Democrats are going to say no, even though he is a respected and respectable nominee. And Mitch McConnell is already angry. Mitch McConnell says a filibuster. Democrats, how dare the Democrats filibuster this nomination? Well, here's what Democrats need to say back, and everybody else needs to say back to Mitch McConnell. Basically two words, Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland, obviously, is the person who was nominated to the Supreme Court by Barack Obama. Almost a year ago, 9-10 months ago, and Mitch McConnell didn't even allow a vote. In other words, it's not a question of filibuster. Mitch McConnell keeps saying, how dare the Democrats even think about a filibuster? We haven't had a filibuster. We've only had one Supreme Court nominee in recent history filibustered, and Mitch McConnell is very self-righteous and indignant. Well, he would not even bring to the floor of the House, the Senate, for a vote Merrick Garland's nomination. And that's why Senate Democrats like Jeff Merkley are appropriately saying this seat was stolen. Now, it's going to be hard for them to keep at it forever, but I think that what Democrats ought to say essentially is this. We will be in agreement. We'll vote, and we will maybe come around. Maybe we'll come around on this, but we'll only come around if Donald Trump convinces us that we can trust the integrity of this process. That is, we have to trust that he's not being paid off somehow, that this is not a Trump business deal. It's somewhere in the background. So we want his tax returns, and we also want him to put all his assets into a blind trust, because this Supreme Court nomination is terribly, terribly important to the country. It is one of the most important steps in government, and we just want to be absolutely sure, Mr. President, that there's no slight hanky-panky going on here. Even though Gorsuch might be a fine man, we just want to make sure that nobody was paid off, that it has nothing to do with Trump businesses or Trump loans or Trump finances. And so we want your tax returns, Mr. Trump. And we also want you to put all of your assets into a blind trust run by an independent trustee, and then we may go along, or at least we'll consider your nominee for the Supreme Court. Oh, and by the way, if it turns out that Mitch McConnell and the Republicans want to use the nuclear option and actually change the rules so that 60 votes are no longer required for a Supreme Court nominee, only 51 votes, well, you know what the Democrats ought to be doing and ought to be saying in that case? They ought to just say, well, okay, we will use the Senate procedures requiring consent orders every step along the way. We'll drag this out for a year or two. Remember Merrick Garland. Senate Democrats have got to get some fiber. Now, they've shown some fiber. In fact, Senate Democrats have shown some important fiber. Democrats on the Senate Finance Committee actually boycotted the Senate Finance Committee today when it was considering both Tom Price, Donald Trump's nominee for Health and Human Services, and also Steve Mnuchin, Trump's nominee for Secretary of Treasury, because Democrats on the Senate Finance Committee said, why should we even go to this vote on the committee, because both of these men have lied to the committee. There's a lot of evidence that both of them lied to the committee. I mean, Mnuchin said to the committee that, in fact, the mortgage lender that Mnuchin ran did not use robo machines, basically didn't use those sort of robo procedures in which bank personnel approve loans without even looking at them. No, he said, we didn't do that. Well, and point of fact, a lot of investigations have shown over the last couple of days that, in fact, Bank One, his bank, One West Bank, that's what it's called, One West Bank, did use those particular robo processes. And in terms of Tom Price, he lied to the committee as well, because he said that he didn't get a sweetheart deal in this immunotherapeutics. He didn't get a sweetheart deal. The deal that he got, that he made in terms of buying stock in this company, it was open to anybody, any of the investors. Well, it turns out it wasn't open to any investors. It was open to just a very, very few investors. It was a sweetheart deal. And Tom Price, who was a member of Congress, is a member of Congress, had a lot to do with regulations and oversight of Health and Human Services and the FDA. When he lies about something like that, that's a serious, important lie. Just as the lie coming from Steve Mnuchin about what his bank did. Remember, and many Americans still remember, what happened to mortgages and the fraud with regard to mortgages and mortgage lending leading up to 2008 and beyond. So Democrats have some backbone in terms of not boycotting and not even voting on the Finance Committee. And the Finance Committee couldn't even move forward as a result. The same thing, and again, I want to commend Democrats today on the Senate Judiciary Committee. They didn't want to move forward with Jeffrey Sessions' nomination. And there, the reason was, look what Donald Trump did to the acting Attorney General last night. Sally Yates. He didn't just dismiss her. He basically accused her of betraying. That word, betraying. Betraying the Justice Department. Betrayal. When that word is used officially, you betrayed the United States, that's not a casual word. So when Donald Trump is dismissing, is firing an acting Attorney General who was confirmed by the Senate. In fact, Jeff Sessions was one of the senators who was on the Judiciary Committee who confirmed her years ago, not that many years ago, and even asked her during her confirmation hearings, what would you do if you had a very difficult case where the president did something you felt was illegal? Would you stand up to the president? That's what he wanted to hear. Because Obama was then the president, and Sally Yates said, yes, I would stand up to the president. I would actually tell the Justice Department and say publicly, I'm not going to go along with it. That's what she did with regard to the Muslim ban, and it is a Muslim ban, and Donald Trump now accuses her of betraying the United States. Well, it's appropriate, it seems to me, that the Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee hold up Jeffrey Sessions and find out from Jeff Sessions, would he have done the same thing if he felt it was wrong? What would he do on the Muslim ban? Now, some encouraging news. I want to give you encouraging news. It's important that you feel encouraged because a lot of this is going on. First of all, I am encouraged by the fact that Senate Democrats are beginning to fight back. That's good. I'm also encouraged by the fact that we have 17 state attorneys general who have vowed over the last 2 days to fight the Muslim ban as unconstitutional. And they are, 4 of them have already filed court cases against the Trump administration. And the others are joining in. And today, also, the city attorney for San Francisco filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration for withholding funds by executive order from cities that are sanctuary cities. You see the pushback? This pushback would not be possible if you were not actively engaged. If these Democrats were not getting huge numbers of phone calls from you, if the city attorney of San Francisco and other city attorneys were not hearing from you, they would not be pushing back. Maybe some of them would, out of just the sheer courage and conscience of themselves and their understanding, but you give them more courage of their conviction. And so you see how it's all related. The resistance is growing. The resistance to the Trump-Bannon administration. That's what we'll call it. I mean, Pence is still there, but Steve Bannon, who, remember, used to have Breitbart News and is now the chief strategist for Donald Trump, and apparently is gaining influence. Every leak that comes out of the White House shows how much more influence Bannon is gaining. He's consolidating his power. So your resistance to the Trump-Bannon regime that is taking over America is already giving Democrats, Democratic officials, more and more backbone, state attorneys general, and you must continue. The resistance must continue to grow. And rather than it be just the Democrats, I hope you in Republican states, or you who have Republican officials representing them, I hope you are also pushing them. We need some Republicans to stand up and be counted as well. These issues are constitutional issues. These issues have to do with the safety and security of America in the future. These issues have to do with maintaining our democratic institutions. As I've said to you before, you are the cornerstones, the basis, the critical grassroots of this resistance. So keep on making those phone calls. Keep on meeting with others, organizing and mobilizing. Start to focus right now on the midterm elections of 2018. Now is the seed time for those midterm elections. And don't forget about your state and local governments as well. You are citizen activists. We need you. Your activism is paying off. See you tomorrow.